Do you know, there are many things you can say about being a Tottenham fan, but one thing you can't say is that life is boring.
Tottenham On Tour. Tottenham On Tour.
Hello everyone, hope you're all having a good day and I hope you're all keeping well. And you should know what this is at this point. This is the fourth episode of the series where I sit down for 5 more minutes and talk about all the pressing issues surrounding our club Tottenham, or as I call it, the Nut House. Right, so 2 days ago the club made an official announcement stating that of all people, Steve Hitchen resigned from his role as Chief Scout, or if you want to be really fancy about it, his role as Technical Performance Director. Yeah, I don't know either. So yeah, on Wednesday night, he packed his bags and walked out that door of our club for what would be the last time. And to be honest with you lads, I'm actually not that saddened by it. In fact, I'm actually quite happy. And here's why. So if you happen to be a member of the Leaning Out campaign, like myself and many others, you'd be very familiar with this name. It's a name that often came up in conversations about Levy, the board, and how poorly they ran our club. And he was often a prime example, to be honest, in some conversations, mainly because of how poor his scouting seemed to be. He was at the club from 2005 to 2010, and that was fine. I mean, during that period, in fairness to him, we got some really good players. I mean, just off the top of my head, I'm thinking absolute greats like Van der Vaart, Modric, even some underrated players like Pavlyuchenko. And of course, who could forget Gareth Bale? But I can guarantee you, not even Steve Hitchen himself knew, and he was the chief scout, how good Gareth Bale was going to be. I don't think anyone actually knew at the time just how good of a player he was going to become. But then in 2017, when he returned, because he left for a while, our signings just went absolutely down the drain. I mean, I'm like a broken record in this series saying this, but of course, we went 2 transfer windows without signing anyone and all that stuff. But the signings that we did get in, they were cheap. I mean, to be honest, there's nothing really wrong with cheap in theory because they could turn out to be absolute steals. I mean, I think we signed Gareth Bale for like less than £10 million at the time. But those signings, some of them were absolutely, they turned out to be just so bad. Just, I mean, again, off the top of my head, I'm thinking of the likes of Nije and Nkudu, and even like Victor Janssen and Llorente. I mean, I know Llorente, to be fair to him, he scored that goal against Man City in the Champions League, but that's all he did when he was at the club. I don't remember literally anything else from him. Levy was not spending anything because, tight bastard, but also that at Hitchen, despite being chief scout, wasn't scouting players correctly, or at least it came across that way. Some of these signings just came across as like, half-baked, like as if the scouting people just weren't even trying. Now, speaking of the Leaning Out campaign, those in England, especially those in London, were protesting for the last week of the transfer window, especially on deadline day. I mean, they even got onto national television, so big up to them for that. But they were protesting for the last week, and some people might think that Steve Hitchen resigned because of the pressure from the protests. Now, listen, I've already said I'm a Leaning Outer, so I would love nothing more than to believe that. But because of the small enough numbers that were at the protest, I'm not actually 100% convinced that that's the case. Now, I'm happy he's gone, and I'm happy that it appears that our movement is making progress. But he could have just resigned because he just didn't want to be here anymore, or maybe Levy and him had an arrangement. But yeah, I really don't know. And I would really like to believe that our movement is finally, gaining traction and is getting on the right track to, as we say, taking our club back. But I don't know what to believe, to be honest. So the question on everyone's minds now is what happens next? Well, I mean, that's all up in the air for the minute, but I'll tell you what I want to see happen next. I want to see Fabio Paratici allowed to cook up his magic. I want to see that absolutely fantastic meme that's going around on Twitter at the minute of the chef absolutely sending it and going full blast in the kitchen, translated into football. I want to see Paratici not being held back by Levy and actually getting proper players in. Now, okay, the 2 players we signed, don't get me wrong, I think they're proper players, and I'm really excited for their time at the club and looking forward to seeing what they can do, because apparently, even though they were bench warmers at Juventus, they're supposed to be really good. But I want a case where Fabio Paratici goes out scouts the players. And I just want Levy to say, yep, fine, fair enough, sign the check, away you go. Paratici could fill that role that Hitchen has now left void, but maybe Levy will find someone else on the board that could fill it. But I mean, I hope that doesn't happen, because no one on the board and the people on it, most of them are probably property investors anyway, and they know feck all about football. So yeah, I personally would like to see Paratici fill that gap. I know that would be even more work thrust upon him, but I mean, when you're working for a football club this big, I mean, you're bound to have a lot of work to do anyway. Now, I want to get your opinion on this down below in the comment section. Do you think Hitchen was a good scout? Do you think he was dreadful and you're glad to see him go? Or do you even think it was a similar situation to Paratici and that he was held back by Levy? So that's all I have to say on this topic. Thank you all very much for watching. And you know what? I really need to come up with a name for this series. Maybe actually you can give me a few ideas in the comment section below as well, if you have the time. Also, just wanted to say that this video is being pre-recorded and edited before our mental health show, but it's being released after the show the next day. So I just want to say a huge thank you to everyone who watched that special show, and big up to everyone who was brave enough to come on and share their stories. And also just a huge shout out to everyone who donated as well. We raised about $602 by the end of the stream. And just to remind you lads, the GoFundMe link is still active. We're raising funds throughout the entire month of February. So if you couldn't donate last night, that's no bother at all. So just a huge thank you to everyone once again. So I love you and leave you. And I'll leave you with not the usual words. I'll leave you with the wise words. It's okay not to be okay.
Tottenham On Tour. Tottenham On Tour.